And we are live. Hi, everybody. My name is Jimmy Shields. Just a quick visual description before we do introductions. I am a white male. I have short, dark hair pushed up to one side. There's a lot of hairspray. Let's hope there's no lighters nearby. I have blue eyes and a short, dark beard, and I'm wearing a blue jumper. I am registered blind. I am autistic, ADHD, and my pronouns are he, him, or registered blind, ADHD rhino. I'm going to introduce you to our guest. Over to yourself.
Hi, my name is Rivera, pronouns they, them. I'm a light-skinned, multiracial human in my mid-30s with dark black hair and shaved sides, and I'm sitting here in this dark wood panel RV office in my gray t-shirt. Yes, I'm an autistic ADHDer, looking forward to kind of sharing more with you today.
And thank you so much, Larry, for joining us because this is Kind Theory's first live. We don't ever call it a live or a podcast. It's exciting. And the fact that we have you here, it's just adding to the celebration. For anyone who doesn't know, Kind Theory is a non-profit based out of Texas trying to create a kind of world for neurodivergent individuals. I am based in Northern Ireland, as I'm pretty sure you can hear from my pretty strong accent. And the joy is, my ADHD, the more passionate I am, the faster I talk. And because I'm sitting with you there, I'm really passionate. So if you need me to slow down, please let me know. We also have some of the team in the chat. So if you do have any questions, please do reach out. And just before we kind of kickstart this conversation to celebrate National Disability Employment Awareness Month, I just wanted to touch base that it is Kind Theory's second birthday. So it's their second birthday. So massive happy birthday. And as part of our birthday celebrations, we are doing a fundraiser. That fundraiser is to help provide neurodiversity affirming care to an individual who needs an ADHD assessment or an autism assessment. So the link is going to appear in the chat throughout this year. So if you can, please share that. Please donate. Your money is going to help make a difference. This is a not-for-profit, so everything we do is neurodivergent led. It is for the community, and we are always looking to support. So now that I'm trying to think of the title, now that the jargony, the lingo side out of the way, I don't know the right title for that, we are going to jump in because we are joined by Neurodivergent Rebel themselves. Lyric, tell us a little about your journey, how you got to here to join us today.
Yeah. Well, it's been a long journey, we'll say that, but we'll start about the time I was 29, just to sum it up, when I found out I was autistic, which, as one can quite imagine, finding out you have a brain that works very differently from the majority of people in the world when you're already almost 30 is really shocking. It's really a jarring, life-changing experience. And that late diagnosis, late discovered piece is really huge to who I am in my life, because really what broke me down and got me to that crisis point of being diagnosed autistic finally, after being autistic my whole life, finally finding out the truth, only because I was in this crisis point where the system I had been in this workplace system, made some changes and then wasn't willing to give me adaptations that would have been needed for me to go along with those changes. And because I couldn't go with what they were doing without having accommodations in place to, get me what I need to be successful, I was blamed for my inability to, do my job without having the tools I needed to do my job, essentially. And when I found out I was autistic, at first I actually went around, before I found out I was autistic, I was going along with that narrative, okay, it's my fault. I'm a broken person. I'm a failed person. It's all my fault. I can't do these things everyone else can do so easily. I suck. That's what I thought. And then I found out I was autistic, and it totally flipped that on my head, because it made me realize that the expectations had been completely unfair, because, I realized I was under-equipped and it wasn't my fault. But this is not the first time in my life where I've burnt out and reached this crisis point. And, it happened to me several times in my life, and when I was a kid, but we never figured out why I was having these regressions as a child, which as an adult, we call them burnouts. But, now as an adult looking back, it's every time this happened to me as a kid too, it was in school when I would be being blamed for not being able to succeed in school. And then it was all of my autistic struggles, instead of noticing I was struggling or I needed more support were treated behaviorally as if I was the problem, as if I needed to be something to conform into the system. And any time I failed to conform, it was punished, scolded, and looked down upon. And I mean, anyone's going to fall apart if they're expected to do things constantly when they don't have the tools they need to do them, which is something many autistic people experience over and over again sometimes.
100%. And like for myself, a lot of what you're saying relates a lot to myself because I'm also late diagnosed. I got my diagnosis of ADHD, and then a few months later, I was sent for a referral for autism, which completely was not what I was expecting because I knew it was ADHD. I've been self-diagnosed as ADHD, but the autistic was like, "What do you mean? Like it could be more?" Because I'm already registered blind, and I grew up being disabled, so I was born with that disability, and I already had all this internalized ableism from everything you're saying, because that's what happens to us is we buy into that we're the problem, that well actually you don't conform, so you are normal, as they say in inverted commas. And it's like, what do I do with this? And then the only thing that you have is to blame yourself. And then some form of rejection sensitivity, I think, comes in there as well, because we get so much harder on ourselves, I think, being neurodivergent. We are so much harder. And there's times that little voice will tell us, you're worth this, what they're saying is true. And we get so caught up in it. And I wonder, with your book, I want to talk a little bit about your book because I'm going to be honest, I had not come across your work until I got involved with kind theory. And now that I've got involved with it, I'm like, how have I not come across you? And honestly, if you haven't, Workplace Neurodiversity Rising, this book that you've written, I want to hear, did it stem from the workplace experience that you had, and what kind of pushed you to write it?
Yeah, so there were a few things that caused me to write this book, and I'm holding up a cover of a white, dark purple book with a pink brain on the cover right now. Workplace Neurodiversity Rising. It's always nearby. My copy's a bit beaten up though, because I'm making an audiobook for it right now that'll hopefully be done soon. But like originally, I started writing the book because I started doing a lot of the consulting work first, years ago, even when I was working inside and had other full-time jobs, I would take like a consulting gig here or there on the side. And then eventually I started building a neurodiversity initiative inside a very inclusive organization that during, right before and leading up to COVID, which kind of put a wrench in
Yeah.
that plan. But so I was developing this neurodiversity initiative and I was teaching already. And I was putting all of this together. And originally, a lot of it was going to be to launch this initiative in this organization. So I was going to, teach other people in our organization how to do these things too. But that never happened because, COVID hit and I was supposed to start this tour in March of 2020, at the end of March. And that's literally, a couple of weeks after COVID hit the United States. So I didn't go on my tour. And by the fall of 2020, though, we tried really hard to keep everybody on the team. We took pay cuts. We did what we could. Our small little consulting firm had to let go a fraction of the staff. And me, because I was about to shift from my primary role as VP of marketing into this new hybridized organizational change agent, organizational culture, neurodiversity role, I was at a point where I'd automated almost everything in marketing and I hadn't started my new thing. It made sense, to kind of, for me to be one of the people to go. And me and, the people that let me go, we all cried together on Zoom. It was the most compassionate time and way I've ever been let go. And I continued to do the consulting work I had sold for that company as an independent contractor through the rest of the year. And we're still close. And I think hopefully we always will be. We have a lot of love for each other. I got to hire my dream boss in that company. So, it's like now the bar's set too high. I can't ever work for someone again, basically. But the book is, once I was on my own and there wasn't more employment out there because we were in this pandemic, I started just doing the work, the neurodiversity work, helping organizations change. I had nothing else available to me at the time. And I realized in the year of me doing the work by myself as a one-person organization in 2020, that it was way too much work for me to ever do. And I had kind of played with the idea of putting it into a book back in like I think 18 or 2019, and I'd shelved it because it's hard to do all these things at once. I'm
Yeah.
really bad about overcommitting to things. But after the first year of consulting, like on my own without other, people helping me in a company, I realized that I am only one person. And though, if I work in an organization that has 1 million employees, I can touch 1 million people really quickly. But there are so many organizations out there that I can't touch. And I don't want to embed myself in every organization. I really don't. So this book is really intended to be a handbook, a guidebook. It's only 200 pages long. I tried to make it in really simple English, and it's geared towards businesses, but really it's applicable towards schools, public spaces, anyone who runs teams or any kind of organization, whether it's a workplace or not, how to work more effectively with people of different brain types. And it's a combination of my lived experiences and also, different research and there's some facts in there, but I try to make it interesting by weaving in stories.
Yeah.
And that's how I give presentations too, because I don't like learning that's boring. I'm an ADHD, or like I don't do well with learning is boring. And so it's easily digestible, and it has examples from both the organizations that were very exclusive to neurodivergent people and also organizations that did it right, and how to be inclusive and how that benefits, like real life examples of how that benefits everyone in an organization, not just the air quotes neurotypical brains, if such a thing really even exists.
100%. And like, I love that it's almost like a labor of love. You had this amazing workplace where you felt like you belonged. And we know when you identify as disabled or neurodivergent or both, whatever you self identify with, that experience of feeling like you belong, it's so hard to find. And like, it's never smooth sailing. We don't walk in and it's like, yeah, it's here, we're at the final point, and everything's amazing. Because it's never that easy. We work with that company, and it's how that company listens and responds to us, and then starts to build out. But the sounds of it, you felt like that sense of belonging, and it's so rare. And I love that you're trying to create that sense of belonging for other individuals by creating this handbook. And I love that. And I must say, I have to tell you, purple is my favorite color because it's the purple pound or the purple dollar, which is the color of disability. So it is a really relevant book. I want to ask you about the book. So if there's an individual maybe listening to this here, what advice would you give them as a job seeker? Because it is National Disability Employment Awareness Month, but as we know, being neurodivergent in the job market or going through the process of recruitment is challenging. So what advice do you have for a neurodivergent job seeker?
Yeah, I would say, depending on your field and the job you're actually looking for, it is important to find an organization that is going to accept the fact that your brain works differently and is going to be willing to support you, and that's not going to be a problem for them. So, you know, thinking about going through interview processes and looking through new jobs, you want to find one that isn't going to be isn't going to be bothered when you mention that you're neurodivergent. But at the same time, you do have to realize that as a job seeker and as a neurodivergent person, there's a lot of misinformation, stereotypes, and stigma out there about all kinds of different disabilities, not just neurodivergence. So there's a sweet spot when you are mentioning and bringing this up in that interview process. So for example, I did my own little social experiment because, I like to do that kind of stuff. And so I have a resume that I've had for years, and the only thing I added to it was really great job experience that should have only been an enhancement. And one thing, a little sticker that said autistic and proud, and took this resume out and applied to 60 or 70 jobs. And before I changed that sticker, this was a resume that used to get me every single callback. Whether or not it got me every single job, it got me every single callback. I didn't get a single
Oh, wow.
reply on my resume when it said actually autistic on there. But I have had a good experience disclosing that I am autistic later in the interview process, after they have already spoken to me, met me, have a little bit more of a rapport, and it is because I'm assuming it's because it humanizes me more,
Yeah.
because then I'm already a person and I'm not just the stereotypes and the things they're worried about, because a lot of times this is not good, but this is something that truly happens in business, because I know a lot of HR people and how managers and leaders work. Businesses are sometimes overly worried about the things they don't know, and so they see something and it raises questions, and they're like, oh, how many systems and structures am I going to have to change to accommodate this person? And if I interview them and then I don't take them, is this going to be a problem? If it's too much, and it's like they're worrying a lot of times for no reason, because a lot of things I need don't cost the company anything and are really easy. And so once they meet me, I can tell them exactly what I need, and they're not going to make stuff up university in their head, like trying to fill in the details with stuff that's not true. Because we're fighting against the stereotypes and the stigmas. But like not disclosing until after you're already on the team might not work very well either, because then, if you find out you've gone through all this and then they're not willing to help you, you're going to be autistic whether you tell them you're autistic or not. That's not going to change. So, I'd rather work somewhere where that is not going to be a problem.
I understand. And I think there's an onus on organizations where they don't talk about what they're doing. What are you doing to support and retain disabled and neurodivergent talent? What are you doing to keep us in your business? Because we see this talk, and I think it's becoming more and more apparent as the years go on. And it's a good thing that companies say we want to hire disabled people, but they're not thinking about the retainment side of it. And it's like, it's all good to get us through the door, but we want to feel like we belong. We want to feel that we can bring our whole selves to work. And I think that one of the probably privileges I've had from my diagnosis was I was already in employment with an employer who was really supportive, who encouraged me to actually go and get my diagnosis. And it was a manager conversation, and her words were, "Well, what difference is it going to make? What difference is it going to make to your life? Why would you be nervous about this?" And I kind of thought to myself and thought, well, I have a bit of paper that tells me I'm registered blind, legally blind in different terms. Why wouldn't I want this bit of paper which is going to make me feel validated? And that's exactly what it did. But I think when it comes to workplaces, we don't see enough talk about this. We don't see enough support on that route to diagnosis. So I want to ask you, because we're talking about what organizations can do here, and maybe some of the errors they've made, but I think there's a fear in companies or with different parts of society to talk about neurodivergence, to be inclusive. So I wonder what advice you have on that. What is an inclusive way to talk about this, or how should organizations be talking about this to attract people?
Yeah. So I think the biggest problem and the biggest thing people do wrong is not to talk about it at all, right? Like that is the completely wrong thing. But that's what some people want to do, because like I've heard organizations, they're like, I'm afraid to talk about this because of legal things. And it's like, no, you just need to find out, like, just have the conversation, dive in and talk about it. And it isn't even necessarily like, I think you should specifically have the conversation on neurodivergence, but there are like pieces of the conversation you can have that aren't even necessarily tied to neurodivergence that help neurodivergent people and everyone in your organization. So, for example, something I always recommend with all of my clients that want to be more inclusive is having more regular open dialogue with their employees. And with, like, especially if you're a manager and you're a leader, you need to like have a more open channel of constant feedback and communication. But it's not just the communication on the day-to-day things like the tasks, although those are very crucial and important to talk about. What's really important is to set a stage, and the leaders have to go first, because we set examples when we're leaders, right? Because the other people won't do what we say, they'll do what we do. And so leaders have to go first and be vulnerable and be willing to be honest with how they're doing day to day, and set the stage for everyone in the organization to share, like, hey, each morning, maybe it's like a 5-minute meeting where everyone's like, this is, what I'm working on today. This is what I need, and then like a status update, like, hey, I'm available to help. I'm feeling great today. I'm my best self today, or I might need some help. I'm not feeling great. I'm gonna have to take the day off, or I'm not my best self. To share things like, maybe your dog passed away, or your guardian, your parent is in a care home and is not doing well, or maybe your kid's sick and was up all night and you didn't get to sleep. Like, it doesn't like, and if it's neurodivergence, like we have these things where we kind of have ebbs and flow. We have peaks where we're doing great, and then one day we might not be doing great. So like, it opens that space for everybody to have a flex to their productivity, because we're not machines. We're not machines. We're not robots. We aren't the same consistent output every single day. And that's a pretty human experience. But with neurodivergent people, we seem to see that in the bigger end of extremes. And the other thing that really is a major obstacle to neurodivergent people in the workplace is misunderstandings, but also assumptions
Yeah.
about neurodivergent people and why we do the things we do, based on like assuming we're operating the same way neurotypicals are operating. So like if an ADHDer like forgets to let you know about something, it's not that they don't care about the thing, they literally probably forgot. And so we need to shift from this mindset of blame, like
Yeah.
shame and blame, to when something goes wrong, we need to approach it with curiosity instead of like trying to find who's responsible for the F up, you know? It's like who not who's responsible. It's like, okay, what went wrong? How can we fix it? Can I help? Can I help make this easier for you? Like if you're a leader, you're there to remove obstacles from the people that work under you. They're not here to serve you. You are the leader. You serve the people who you work for. And so like, can you remove obstacles if you're a leader? And what can we do to make sure it doesn't happen in the future instead of blame? And that's something that happens a lot because we don't seek to understand. We just seek to hold someone else accountable, and that also kind of creates problems with not being able to hold ourselves accountable and hold it's a whole accountability pyramid, which is an entirely different organizational cultural issue that causes a lot of problems.
Oh yeah, I call it toxic. Toxic culture.
Toxic, yeah.
And it's like, it's what you're saying, leaders tend to listen to respond. They listen to react, sorry, they listen to react. They don't go away and digest and then come back and respond in a effective way. It's, well, your fault, it's your fault because it didn't happen, or it's your fault we can't give these accommodations, or it's my manager's fault, you haven't approved it. There's always this blame game. And I think a lot of it also comes down to as well when we talk about understanding differences, that there's different ways of doing things, and one side does not fit all. I think a lot of that comes down to this, the ableism that is ingrained in cultures, and it's not even ingrained just in workplaces, it's in society, right? There's no escape from it because we aren't educated about ableism. So we have this belief that if somebody says they're disabled, or somebody says they are ADHD or autistic, whatever it is they're self-identifying with, you automatically get this tick box in your head of this stereotype and this ableist assumption: this person's going to fit into this box and they're not going to be able to do X, Y, Z. When in reality, this person can probably do all 26 letters of the alphabet and still keep going and give 110%. So I think that is something I would love to see organizations change, is that culture around ableism. Unlearn ableism, and understand that the benefit and power of different thinking in the workplace. Because studies show diverse workplaces with different thinking are, is it 30% more effective? And it's like, why are we doing more? I don't understand.
And they're not even new statistics either. They're like old
No,
statistics. Like we've known for years that having a diverse team is better for
yeah,
every kind of organization.
100%. And I think one of my favorite things is when you get two neurodivergent people together, or two neurodiverse people, whatever way you self-identify, you get these two people together and watch the magic happen. And I think that's one of the things, to bring it back to Kind Theory, that's one of the things that got me really involved in Kind Theory, was it was neurodivergent individuals working together, collaborating, sharing content, trying to make a difference to the local community. And it was just like, this is the way things should be. It should be different voices in the community represented at the table, because we do not get it. So in conscious of time, we have about 5 minutes left.
Ooh.
And I want to talk about Disability Employment Awareness Month, because this is a US holiday. And I don't know why we don't have it in the UK. I do not understand why, because it is such a monumental moment, for time for employers, I personally think, to stop, reflect, and think, what are we doing next? What is our next intention for the next 12 months? And review what you've done currently and get that feedback. So I want to ask you, what are some practical steps that organizations can take, and an individual?
Yeah. So first of all, organizations need to kind of get a pulse on what's going on in the organization. A lot of organizations come to me under the false assumption that they don't have neurodivergent people in the organization. And statistically, it's maybe 20%. I assume it's probably higher. But we'll see how it goes as the years go on. But that means if you've got 10 people, you've got probably 2 neurodivergent people on your team, whether they've told you so or not, unless your organization is really toxic, and then it might actually be chasing neurodivergent candidates away, which is also a
Yes.
possibility. So like that's a question I start with in organizations, like, do you have neurodivergent people on your team right now that you're aware of? And if not, let's look at why first, because if you're an organization, they always want to start with hiring initiatives,
Yes.
which is the wrong place to start. I tell people it's a lot like planting a garden, right? You've got different kinds of flowers that need to come into these gardens, and you may have to put them in different flower pots because different flowers are going to need different soil, different pH level to grow and be their best, most productive flowers, like, and make all the flowers and do all the things. And you wouldn't, just get rid of the flowers when it's not their fault for growing in the wrong environment. And so if you start this hiring initiative and you haven't set the garden up and your culture is completely toxic, you haven't looked at policies and procedures yet, you're going to bring in neurodivergent people that you're setting up for failure because you haven't fixed the environment yet. So that's my big caution to organizations is try to start having those conversations and seeing what the status of your organization is right now before you try to bring in more neurodivergent talent. And if you're a person who is looking out for a job right now, you know, really, I think it's important for you to evaluate like what your needs are as an individual person, and also be really familiar with your skills and what you love doing and also what you hate doing. For me as an autistic person specifically, I get really, really, really drained really, really quickly when I am doing tasks that are not well suited to my particular brain. Um, but if I'm in the right seat, if I'm in the right job, I can thrive. I can do really well. Um, and as me, like I'm working on my own as an organizational consultant freelancer, that is me turning down jobs that aren't a good match for me, even if they're willing to pay me to do something. I'm like, that's not the kind of work I do. That's not good for me. That's going to stress me out too much. It's not worth it. If it's working in an organization under someone else, that might be going through the job process and being really picky with those job descriptions, like reading those job descriptions and making sure they really fit you. If you're going through the job process and the job description is not clear, that may mean asking a lot of questions about things that are left out of the job description to make sure you're accepting a job that's going to really be good for you. And if you are going through the job interview process, it shouldn't just be the interviewer grilling you for like information and interviewing you, giving you the third degree. You shouldn't feel like you're like in this police interrogation. You should be interviewing and interrogating the person who's interviewing you just as much as they are interviewing you. And I come from a background in recruiting, so I tell you, this isn't going to put recruiters off. It shouldn't. And if it does, that should be a really big red flag. As a
Yes.
recruiter, that's a green flag for me when someone is like really invested in trying to find out, not only if like I'm trying to find out if they're a good fit for the organization, but they're trying to find out if they're a good fit and if they're going to like working at the organization. And as a recruiter, like I want to be really honest and transparent and be like, I think you might hate this job. Like, I'm going to tell somebody. I'm not going to pretend to church it up and act like someone I think is going to love a job just so I can get this person in that chair if I think they're going to be miserable. We
Yeah.
shouldn't want to be being manipulative and tricky with people we're recruiting. And so watch out for that if you are on that hiring end of things.
100%. And I love everything you said. I think if I was snorting anymore, my head's just going to roll off because I didn't want to make noise and get distracted. But that was so well said. And it's so true. I think it's a responsibility of us all, not just our employers, but to be able to advocate for ourselves as a neurodivergent individual and to make sure we don't put ourselves in those environments where there is red flags. Because once you start looking at red flags, or once you start looking at organizations claiming to be all singing, all dancing inclusive, once you get under that hood, start looking at the website, things will start coming through. And you're right, a recruiter is not asking questions. A recruiter, I'm not saying they're a salesperson, but also come from a recruitment background. If you don't know your organization that you're meant to be recruiting for, there's something really not right about what you're doing there. You must not be belonging. So we are at time, and I just want to say, Lara, thank you so much for being our
Thank
first
you.
guest on our live series, My Kind of Theory. And again, just to, if everyone who has joined, thank you so much for joining. I know there's been chatter in the box, which next time we will get to, I promise. But again, help us celebrate Kind Theory's second anniversary by helping us providing neurodiversity affirming care to individuals. The link is going to appear in the chat and on the screen. So do please check that out and make a donation. Any amount will help make a difference so we can help individuals access care. So, Lara, where can everyone check you out just before we finish?
I'm pretty easy to find. Neurodivergent Rebel on pretty much every social media that I can think of right now. My website is neurodivergentrebel.com. And if you're looking for business consulting, it's neurodivergentconsulting.org.
Brilliant. And I have to tell you, Neurodivergent Rebel is just my favorite tag ever. So
Oh,
incredible.
thanks.
So thank you everyone for joining and have a fabulous day.
Bye.
Or even bye.